When Clint Eastwood pulled into the parking lot of a small grocery store, dressed in a simple jacket and light-colored pants, no one gave him a second glance. To the busy shoppers, he was just another customer running errands. But for a young cashier named Jasmine, a kind gesture to help an older man with his groceries would become a moment she'd never forget. What she didn't know was that this quiet stranger wasn't just any man, he was Clint Eastwood. And what happened next wasn't just a random act of kindness. It became a life-changing story of generosity, gratitude, and the unexpected power of being seen by someone who believed in her potential. It was a typical evening at Greenview Market, the late afternoon sun filtering through dusty windows and casting long shadows across the aisles. Jasmine adjusted her name tag, its edges frayed from too many washes, and forced a smile as she rang up a customer's groceries. It was her second shift of the day, and she was counting the hours until she could go home. At 16, Jasmine already carried responsibilities that most adults would find overwhelming. Between school, her part-time job, and helping her mom raise her younger brother, she barely had time to catch her breath. "Thank you, Mrs. Carter," Jasmine said warmly, handing the elderly woman her change. Mrs. Carter patted her hand, her eyes soft with gratitude. Jasmine always took the extra second to ask how her customers were doing, even when the store was busy. People noticed her kindness, and it gave her a quiet pride, even if she rarely let it show. As the dinner rush began to fade, Jasmine spotted her mom browsing the cereal aisle with her little brother, Malik, who was tugging on her sleeve, begging for a box of sugary snacks. Jasmine smiled to herself. They didn't have much, but her mom always made sure Malik felt cared for, even if it meant stretching every dollar. The bell above the door chimed, signaling a new customer. Jasmine barely glanced up as she wiped the counter and prepared for closing. She had learned to focus on her tasks to keep the exhaustion at bay. The familiar hum of the store surrounded her. The squeak of cart wheels, the soft chatter of shoppers, the faint buzz of fluorescent lights. But amidst the routine chaos of the store, something was about to happen that would change Jasmine's life forever. She didn't know it yet, but today would be anything but ordinary. The parking lot of Greenview Market was quieter now, the fading light casting a golden glow over the rows of parked cars. Jasmine had just finished her shift, slipping her apron off and folding it under her arm as she walked toward her mom's car. Her feet ached, and the thought of finally sitting down filled her with relief. But then, out of the corner of her eye, she noticed an older man struggling with a shopping cart near his car. Two heavy bags dangled precariously from the sides, and his weathered hand seemed unsteady as he tried to lift them. Jasmine hesitated for only a moment. She was tired, sure, but she knew what her dad would have said. "Always help when you can, Jazz. That's how you leave the world better than you found it." Tucking her exhaustion aside, she approached the man with her usual warm smile. "Excuse me, sir. Need a hand?" He looked up, startled but not unkindly. His face was lined with age, and his sharp blue eyes held a quiet intensity. He wore a plain button-up shirt and jeans, nothing flashy, but there was something about him, something commanding. "That'd be mighty kind of you," he said in a low, gravelly voice that seemed to carry more weight than the moment called for. Jasmine didn't think twice. She grabbed the bags from his cart, her arms straining slightly under the weight. "Where's your car?" she asked, scanning the lot. "Just over there," he said, gesturing to an older model sedan parked a few spots away. As they walked, he asked, "You work in the store?" "Yes, sir," Jasmine replied. "I have to finish my shift. My mom and brother are inside. I'm helping them shop." He nodded thoughtfully. "You got a lot on your plate?" Jasmine shrugged, brushing it off. She wasn't used to people noticing her struggles. As she placed the last bag in his trunk, the man turned to her, his expression unreadable. "Thank you, young lady," he said, pulling a folded piece of paper from his pocket. "Take this. You've earned it." Before she could ask what it was, he tipped his hat and got into his car. Jasmine stood there, confused but curious, watching him drive away. She had no idea that what was written on that note would change everything. Jasmine slid the last bag into the man's trunk, brushing her hair out of her face with the back of her hand. The evening breeze carried the faint scent of fresh rain, and for a moment, The exhaustion from her long day felt a little lighter. "Thank you," the man said, his voice steady but warm. "Not everyone would stop to help these days." "It's no problem," Jasmine replied, trying to hide the slight strain in her voice. "Just glad I could." He paused, leaning slightly against the car as he studied her. "You work long hours at the store?" She hesitated, unsure why he was asking. "Yes, sir. I work part-time after school. Helps with bills and everything." The man nodded, his gaze unwavering but not intrusive. "And what about you? What's your plan?" "My plan?" she repeated, caught off guard. No one had asked her that in a while. After a moment, she shrugged. "I want to be a journalist someday. Write stories that matter, you know? But for now," she gestured to the grocery store behind her, "I've got to do what I can." For the first time, the man smiled. Not a wide grin, but the kind of smile that made her feel like he understood more than she'd said. "That's a good dream," he said. "Takes grit to chase something like that." Jasmine didn't know how to respond, so she just smiled back. The man reached into his pocket and pulled out a folded piece of paper. "Here," he said, handing it to her. "For you. Don't lose it." She blinked, confused. "What is it?" "Something to think about," he replied cryptically. With that, he tipped his hat, climbed into his car, and drove off, leaving Jasmine standing in the parking lot. As she watched his car disappear, the paper felt strangely heavy in her hand. Curiosity bubbled in her chest, but she slipped it into her pocket for now. There was still dinner to finish and her family to think about. Jasmine pushed open the door to their small apartment, the familiar scent of her mom's cooking wrapping around her like a warm hug. "You're late," her mom called from the kitchen, where she stood stirring a pot of stew. "Long shift?" "Yeah," Jasmine said, setting her bag down by the door. Malik ran up to her, his sneakers squeaking against the linoleum as he hugged her waist. "I got the cereal," he announced proudly, holding up the box she had noticed earlier in the store. "Good choice," Jasmine said with a tired smile, ruffling his hair. As they sat down for dinner, Jasmine told her mom about the older man she had helped in the parking lot. "He gave me this weird note," she said, pulling it out of her pocket and placing it on the table. Her mom raised an eyebrow, her tone playful. "You sure you didn't meet a celebrity? Sounds like something out of one of those feel-good movies." Jasmine laughed softly, but didn't say anything more. The truth was, she didn't feel ready to open the note yet. Instead, she tucked it back in her pocket, telling herself she'd read it later. After dinner, Jasmine collapsed onto the worn couch, her body heavy with fatigue. She stared at the ceiling, her thoughts wandering to the man's words. "Takes grit to chase something like that." He had said it so simply, but it felt like he'd seen straight through her, seen the long nights of studying after work, the days spent worrying about how her mom would cover the rent, the dreams she clung to even when they felt out of reach. She reached in her pocket and felt the folded paper, but decided against reading it just yet. Right now, all she wanted was to close her eyes and let the day fade away. Tomorrow, she thought. Tomorrow, she'd figure out what the note was all about. For now, she let herself rest, the man's calm voice still echoing in her mind. The apartment was quiet except for the faint hum of the refrigerator as Jasmine sat cross-legged on the couch. Malik had fallen asleep, his cereal box tipped on its side next to his bed, and her mom was in her room reading a tattered novel Jasmine had seen her pick up dozens of times before. Jasmine reached into her pocket, pulling out the folded piece of paper. For hours, she had resisted the urge to open it, unsure of what she might find. But now, in the stillness of the evening, her curiosity finally won. She unfolded the note carefully, smoothing out the creases with her fingers. The handwriting was neat, but slightly slanted, the kind of penmanship that hinted at years of writing letters or signing important documents. Jasmine's eyes scanned the first few words, and her breath caught in her throat. "Dear Jasmine," it began, "in the short time we spoke, I could tell you're someone special. You remind me of someone I knew long ago, someone who taught me that strength, kindness, and perseverance can overcome just about anything." Jasmine's hands trembled as she read on, her heart pounding with every word. Clint's words were more than just compliments. They were affirmations of things she had always hoped someone would see in her, but rarely heard aloud. "It's rare to meet someone as young as you with such grace and maturity," The note continued. "I can see how much you're juggling, and I want to help you on your journey." Her hands shook as she unfolded the final part of the note, and something slipped out, a check. It fluttered onto her lap, and when her eyes landed on the amount, she froze. $15,000. She stared at the number, her vision blurring as tears filled her eyes. She reread the note, struggling to process Clint's closing words. "Use this however you see fit. To help your family, to pursue your dreams, or to simply take a moment to breathe. Keep being who you are, and never stop believing in your potential." Jasmine sat frozen on the couch, the check cradled in her hands like it might vanish if she let it go. Tears blurred her vision, spilling onto her cheeks as she tried to steady her breathing. She couldn't remember the last time someone had done something this kind for her, let alone someone she barely knew. "Mama," she called out, her voice cracking as she got up and walked toward her mother's room. Her mom looked up from her book, her face instantly creasing with concern when she saw Jasmine's tear-streaked face. "What's wrong?" her mom asked, setting the book aside. Jasmine couldn't speak at first. She just handed over the note and the check, watching as her mom's expression shifted from confusion to shock. "Is this real?" her mom whispered, her voice breaking. Jasmine nodded. "He gave it to me, the man I helped in the parking lot. I didn't even know who he was at first, but..." Her voice cracked again, and she buried her face in her hands. "Why would he do this? For me?" Her mom pulled her into a hug, holding her tightly. "Because he saw you, Jasmine," she said softly. "He saw the kind of person you are, and I think it reminded him of the good in the world." Jasmine pulled back, her tears still falling, but her chest lighter. "This could change everything, Mama. We could fix the car, pay the rent. I could even save for college." Her mom nodded, tears glistening in her own eyes now. "And you will. But don't rush into anything, baby. Let's take a moment to breathe. You've worked so hard for so long. You deserve this." Jasmine clutched the note and checked her chest, overwhelmed by a mix of gratitude, disbelief, and hope. For the first time in years, the future didn't feel like an uphill climb. It felt like an open door. That night, as she lay in bed staring at the ceiling, Jasmine promised herself one thing. She would make the most of Clint Eastwood's gift. And someday, she'd pay it forward. The sunlight streamed through the window as Jasmine sat at the kitchen table, a blank notebook in front of her. Malik was sprawled on the floor, surrounded by his action figures, humming a tune as he played. Jasmine tapped her pen against the paper, her thoughts racing. Clint's gift wasn't just money. It was a lifeline, a chance to change things not just for her, but for her whole family. Flipping open her laptop, she searched for summer programs in journalism. For years, she had dreamed of being a journalist, of telling stories that mattered, but it had always felt out of reach. Tuition fees, travel costs, and endless responsibilities had made it seem impossible. Now, for the first time, the idea didn't feel like a dream. It felt real. She found a program at a university an hour away, a summer workshop that promised hands-on experience and connections to professionals in the field. Jasmine felt her heart race as she clicked the apply button. Her essay practically wrote itself, every word fueled by her newfound hope. Later that day, she sat down with her mom to budget out the rest of the money. Together, they mapped out how to use it wisely, fixing the family's old car, paying off overdue bills, and setting aside enough to buy Malik new clothes and supplies for school. "We'll finally get that faucet fixed too," her mom joked, nudging her gently. Jasmine laughed, the sound light and unrestrained. For the first time in years, the weight she'd been carrying didn't feel quite so heavy. She realized Clint's kindness wasn't just about the money. It was about the way it had reignited her belief in possibilities. As she closed her notebook that night, she thought about how far a simple act of generosity could go. What Clint had done for her, she now wanted to do for others. It was another busy afternoon at Greenview Market, and Jasmine was back behind the counter, ringing up groceries with her usual warm smile. But today felt different. With Clint's gift still fresh in her heart, Jasmine couldn't stop thinking about the people who walked through the store each day. Mothers with tired eyes, teens juggling responsibilities, and families who were just trying to get by, like hers. During her break, She approached her manager, Mr. Davis, with an idea. "I'd like to set up a small fund," she began hesitantly, "to help teens in the neighborhood. Maybe cover school supplies, groceries, just small things to make life easier." Mr. Davis looked at her, surprised but impressed. "That's a generous idea, Jasmine. Let me know how I can help." With his blessing, Jasmine quietly started a fund, using a portion of Clint's gift to kick it off. She spread the word subtly, mentioning it to co-workers and trusted customers, leaving a small jar near the register with a simple sign, "Helping our neighbors in need." One day, as she worked the register, a young mother came through with a toddler perched on her hip. The woman hesitated as the total rang up, her face falling as she dug through her purse. "I'll have to put a few things back," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. Without hesitation, Jasmine smiled and tapped the register. "Don't worry about it," she said gently. "I got it covered." The woman's eyes widened, and tears welled up as she stammered her thanks. Jasmine simply waved it off, her heart swelling as she realized she was paying forward the same kindness that Clint had shown her. The ripple effect had begun. Clint's gesture had inspired her to see beyond her own struggles and to become a source of hope for others. It wasn't just about giving back. It was about reminding people that even in the hardest moments, someone cared. And Jasmine knew she would carry that lesson with her forever. The late-night quiet of the apartment was Jasmine's favorite time to think. She sat at the kitchen table, her notebook and a pen in front of her, staring at the blank page. The words were swirling in her mind, but starting felt like the hardest part. She picked up her pen and took a deep breath. Slowly, the words began to flow. "Dear Mr. Eastwood, I don't even know where to begin. When you handed me that note in the parking lot, I had no idea it would change my life. Your kindness gave me something I haven't felt in a long time. Hope. I used your gift to make changes that I'd only dreamed of. First, I enrolled in a summer journalism program. I've always wanted to be a journalist, but money and life made it feel impossible. Now I'm learning from real professionals, and for the first time, I believe this dream can actually come true. I also used your gift to help my family. We were able to fix our old car, pay some overdue bills, and even buy new clothes and school supplies for my little brother Malik. Seeing him smile, knowing he feels supported, is something I can't put a price on. But the most important thing your gift did was inspire me to give back. I started a small fund at the grocery store to help people in our neighborhood. I've been able to quietly cover groceries for struggling families and provide school supplies for teens like me. It feels amazing to pass on the kindness you showed me. I'll never forget your words. Keep being who you are, and never stop believing in your potential. Those words are my guide now. They remind me to keep pushing forward, no matter how hard things get. Thank you for seeing me and for believing in me. Your kindness lit a spark in my life, and I'll make sure that spark keeps spreading. With gratitude, Jasmine Walker." She folded the letter carefully, sealing it in an envelope. As she wrote Clint's name on the front, she smiled, feeling lighter than she had in years. Months passed, and Jasmine's life felt like it had transformed. Between her shifts at the grocery store and her evening classes, she barely had time to catch her breath, but she didn't mind. She was moving toward her dream, one step at a time. One afternoon, as she was walking home from work, her mom greeted her at the door with an envelope in hand. "This came for you," her mom said, a hint of curiosity in her voice. Jasmine froze when she saw the return address. Her heart pounded as she tore open the envelope, revealing a handwritten letter. "Dear Jasmine, thank you for your letter. Your words meant more to me than I can express. Hearing how you've used the gift to improve your life and help others made me feel like I made the right decision that day in the parking lot. People like you remind me that the world still has a lot of good in it. Your strength and determination inspire me, and I have no doubt that you'll achieve everything you set your mind to. Keep striving, keep giving, and keep believing in yourself. I'll be cheering you on from afar. Sincerely, Clint Eastwood." Tears welled in Jasmine's eyes as she read the letter, her hands shaking. She held it close to her chest, feeling the warmth of his words wrap around her. Months later, Jasmine stood outside the entrance to her journalism school, clutching her bag and a folder of papers. The weight of the moment wasn't lost on her. She was here because someone believed in her, and now it was her turn to believe in herself. As she walked through the doors, she thought of Malik, her mom, and all the people she'd helped through the fund at the store. She knew Clint's kindness had created a ripple, and she was determined to keep it moving. Small acts of kindness, she realized, could truly change lives. And in this moment, Jasmine knew she was exactly where she was meant to be. Want to hear more of this? Then click on the video on the right-hand side, which is even crazier.